Instead of percolating down, the water is now soaked up by the trees and transpired into the atmosphere, causing our communities to be running out of water, our rivers to be running dry, irrigation that used to provide jobs to be gone, all in the name of the spotted owl. Now, I believe that a reasonable society can protect the spotted owl and create jobs, and that's the purpose of my bill. But before we go and rescue an industry from the past, we have to fight the fight to keep American oil being produced here, because the listing of that lizard has the potential to shut down all of the oil and gas jobs in a 3-county region and maybe even across the entire state. That's still unclear. We have people beginning to show up in large numbers to demonstrate against a government that is becoming too insensitive, too concerned about the hypothetical, and not concerned enough about people who are just struggling to make ends meet. We find citizens who are simply aghast that this government would be killing jobs at a time when our economy is struggling so bad, and at the very time that we're struggling to keep our industry alive from some nameless bureaucrat. We find our president going to South America to see what he can do to invigorate an oil industry there. My friends, this is a time for us to produce American jobs and American energy. Now, I believe that we can produce energy and protect the species. I believe that we can produce energy and keep our environment clean, and I can believe that we can produce American jobs while protecting species, the environment, workers. I believe that we can do it all, and I believe that Americans insist that we do it. They don't want to see the species go extinct, but neither do they want jobs to be shipped overseas in the name of some value they don't quite understand. Now, the truth is that where we have stopped logging, the trees are too dense for the spotted owl now. The habitat, instead of getting better, has gotten worse. And right across the street in the Mescalero Indian Reservation, where they can log at their own will, and they have been logging, the spotted owl prefers that habitat because they need to sit on the branches. They jump off the trees, they get flying speed, they're able to overtake the rodents or whatever it is they live off of. And so the habitat we were trying to protect actually is simply not suitable now for the spotted owl, and they're moving over next door. And we've done this in the name of some science that has never been made clear to us, and it's very similar to what's going on with the lizard. They're going to list some species that I suspect there is no DNA difference between the 5-ring lizard and the 6-scale lizard and the 5-scale lizard. I suspect that that's a mutation rather than a DNA difference. I suspect that there is no science on it. And so we joined with people in our district this week to begin to say publicly to the government, enough is enough. You're making promises with our money that you can't keep. You're committing us to more wars. You're committing us to more social payments. You're committing the taxpayer to a higher burden. At the same time, you're causing dwindling taxation into the government coffers by killing our jobs. And people are saying it is enough. We saw in the last election a turnout of incredible magnitude of people saying that the government is not listening and we don't care about what the government is doing anymore. The frustration is deeper and deeper. And frankly, I encourage that because I believe that the only hope in turning back a government that is too strong, a government that does not care, a government that is willing to take jobs from its people, a government that is willing to commit our troops anywhere in the world in the name of whatever vague policy they have, is a government that is out of control. This needs to return to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We have set up on our web page places where you can go and make comment to the government. You can call our office here and make those comments, and we will relay those comments for you. So understand that we are in a fight for the future of this nation, in a fight for our economy, and the greatest enemy is the government itself. The government intervenes in ways that it has no constitutional authority. The government intervenes with increasing tax policies so that even our president said in the State of the Union message that we are too highly taxed in our corporations and we need to get that in control. Let our president get that in control. We will vote gladly for such tax decreases here on the floor of this House in order to ensure that jobs are created. The greatest reason that our jobs are going overseas are two: taxation policy and regulation policy. Regulations like the spotted owl, regulations like the listing of the lizard, regulations like the choking down of our financial system by the regulators now who are going into banks and scaring them by threats of fines. We are choking our economy down in the name of safety and security and achieving neither. The sad thing is that we could cure most of our economic ills if we simply grow the economy. Actuarial tables tell us that if we had 3.5% rate of growth, that our economic problems in the states and in this government began to disappear. And you would ask, is 3.5% possible? Well, that's exactly the rate we have averaged for the last 75 years. But today, because of our policies of overtaxation, overregulation, our unfriendliness to business in general, we find ourselves stuck at about 1 to 1.5% rate of growth. Thus, we're finding the pressure on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. We're finding the pressure of the $15 trillion debt. We're finding the pressure of $1.5 trillion deficit. In order to meet those pressures, our Federal Reserve is beginning to print more and more money, so we're seeing prices skyrocket. So at a time when jobs are scarce and people worry for the future, we're seeing prices of gasoline go up, prices of vegetables going up, the prices of gold, silver, iron, everything is going up, not because their value has increased since last year or last month, but because the value of your dollar is decreasing because we're printing so many. And even then, we still are having increased pressure. We find the Japanese are not going to be able to lend us money. They typically were large buyers of our treasury bills, meaning they were loaning the government money. Not for a long time. China is beginning to decrease its holdings of treasury bills, and we're hearing these vague messages that our bankers, Chinese, Japanese, our own citizens, think our economy is out of control. Our debt and our deficits are out of control. So they're saying, no more, we're not going to lend you any more. That then drives the Federal Reserve to make up the difference by printing money. That's an avenue that some of the worst economies in the world have pursued. In Argentina last year, Argentina had a rate of inflation of 1,500%. That means if you began the year with $1.5 million in the bank, at the end of that year, you had about 100,000. And at the end of next year, it's going to be down under 100,000, under 10,000. So in just 2 years, if you had a nest egg in retirement, it will become of no value. That's the path that Argentina chose, and it's the path now that we're beginning to choose. Endless deficits, endless debt, wars that bankrupt us with no reasonable explanation of why we're in those wars. And it's that situation that the American taxpayer faces today. It's that situation that causes me to stand and say America has done enough. American soldiers have done enough. American taxpayers have done enough. Let our friends come to the table. Let our friends begin to shoulder their share of the burdens. Meanwhile, let us begin to cut the spending here in Washington. We can cut many ways without cutting the actual outcomes to people. We have duplicate agencies. We have waste. We have fraud. We have abuse. Cut those. But on the other hand, begin to grow our economy and create jobs in industries that used to be here, industries that would start up overnight. These are not 10 and 20-year plans. These are ideas that can begin immediately. The people would begin to work in the forest immediately if we would let them. They would begin to drill wells again. Offshore, we could get our deep water platforms to working once again. Those have been idled by a government that is too powerful and has shut down over 100,000 jobs offshore. These are the reasons that we're having the economic difficulties that we do. And when we have difficulties as the world's largest economy, the Germans said it best, when you sneeze, the U.S. sneeze economically, you give the rest of the world flu. If we will begin to set about creating American jobs, producing American energy, American timber, American manufactured goods, up and down the economic spectrum, then we can cure not only our economy, but we can cure the world's economy. And I believe that we're going to do that. I believe that because the American people are beginning to stand and insist on it. Their insistence is patient, their insistence is respectful, but it's insistent nonetheless, and it has no waver, no quiver to it. It says, fix the problems. Come to this city of Washington and vote not like Republicans, not like Democrats, but like Americans. And when we begin to do that in this body, I believe that the American people will come together and support us in rekindling that greatness that lies within this country, that American exceptionalism that people for generations have come here to find, leaving everything behind, leaving families, a culture behind, leaving their own language behind. And they've come here for generations to find those words, opportunity and hope, which have been so deeply ingrained into the fabric of this nation. And that is what I believe that we should be engaged in at this moment in this body. Madam Speaker, I would yield back the balance of my time, and thank you.
Thank you. Yields back. Does the gentleman from New Mexico seek recognition for a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I would move that we adjourn for the evening.
The question is on the motion to adjourn.